Unacast is an award-winning human mobility data company that harnesses unanimous device location data, map data, and strategic intelligence to tackle business challenges for retail, real estate, and marketing industries. Recently, Unacast developed the social distancing scoreboard to help organizations measure and understand the effectiveness of social distancing initiatives at the local levels. Unacast's latest offering, Neighborhood Insights, is the new product in the COVID-19 toolkit and allows retailers and real estate professionals to understand the changing market landscape, from forecasting rent levels to timing store reopenings. Neighborhood Insights empowers CER professionals to make data-driven decisions when assessing divestments or acquisitions. So I'm excited to introduce Madeline No, Director of Product and Insight, and Ingrid Pilskog, Product Manager, to walk us through these products. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Bethany. Hi, everyone. So as Bethany mentioned, my name is Madeline. I'm the Director of Product and Insights at Unacast.
And I'm Ingrid. I'm the Product Manager working with our software development team at Unacast.
So Ingrid and her team are actually responsible for the products that we're going to demo today. So there they are. Say hello virtually to the team. So before we actually get into the demo itself, Bethany, again, thanks for that overview of Unacast. I'll just expand a bit. So Unacast is a human mobility data company. We're focused on understanding how people interact with places around the world. But more specifically, we focus on building actionable insights from human mobility data. We know data by itself, it's great, but data when explored and aggregated to answer specific questions or use cases, that's when it's truly powerful. And basically, the Unacast model is what we call the real world graph. So it's our understanding for how people move around the planet and interact with the locations around them. We do that by utilizing 3 different ingredients. So the first is human behavior, which is basically the mobility data that we collect from our app partners via smartphones. We roughly see about 1/3 of the US population on a monthly basis. We then layer in maps to understand the context of where people are moving about. So specifically the neighborhoods or the venues that they're going to. And then lastly, but most importantly, we have a large data science and engineering team that focuses on the strategic intelligence part. So we're making sure that we can maximize the output of the data to derive meaningful insights. And our insights really are geared towards real estate and retail professional. That's where we spend a lot of our time. We're answering kind of typical questions, as you can see here. We're not going to go into the details for all of these use cases today, but if these are questions that you have on your mind when you go to sleep, some of our data sets can most likely help you solve them. And we also support different integrations to satisfy all user types. One of the ways we actually display our data is through nifty visualized platforms, and we're going to see one of those in action today with our Neighborhood Insights tool. So before we actually go to the tool itself, Ingrid, perhaps you can give some context regarding why this tool was built. What was the intended outcome you were hoping for?
Yeah, with COVID-19, people's behaviors have changed quite dramatically. The thing is, these changes varied significantly from neighborhood to neighborhood, state to state. What's happening in one county isn't necessarily going to translate to even the adjacent county. In addition to all the variations, there's just simply a lack of useful data available. And we know that human mobility data can be quite powerful in helping us cope with the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. For those of you who aren't familiar, as Bethany mentioned before, we actually built a COVID-19 product suite in response to the pandemic. Originally, it started with our social distancing scoreboard, which measured people's reactions and adherence to social distancing measures across the US. But as a result of this change in behavior, how people actually interact within the world is quite different now.
Exactly, and that's what our Neighborhood Insights tool aims to do. We are really trying to get a handle of which neighborhoods are rebounding, where there are major shifts in population demographics, and how people's behavioral patterns are changing as a result of the changing environment. We want to provide a clearer picture of what's happening on the ground in different areas so that people can react appropriately and plan for the recovery.
So for the purpose of today's demo, we'll be looking at Boston, the financial district in New York City, and Round Rock, Texas. So with that said, I think we should jump right into it.
Yes, sure. Let's have a look at our Neighborhood Insights tool.
Awesome. So it looks like we're first going to check on the situation in Boston. Before we dive into the insights themselves, though, can you just give us a quick overview of how a user would understand or interact with what's available here?
Sure. The first thing that draws our attention here is the colored map. By looking at the map, we can, based on the red and green color, quickly get a picture of which of the census block groups that are recovered, the green ones, and which are not recovered, the red ones.
So this is a pretty map. It's quite intuitive. Looks like we have some more information on the left-hand side of the map.
Correct. In the panel on the left-hand side here, we actually have our metrics describing the collection. The first is a histogram demonstrating a daily snapshot of the distribution of the census block groups in your collection based on their change in foot traffic compared to last year.
Okay, interesting. So looking at this histogram, can you actually tell me how to interpret this?
Yeah, so for example, if you look at this bar, it's saying that 53 of the CBGs out of our 988 CBGs within this collection have foot traffic that is down 60 to 70% from last year. So by looking at the distribution of CBGs across foot traffic buckets, you can understand how they as a whole.
Okay, interesting. So I'm looking at this histogram, and it's basically telling me that as a whole, this Boston collection or neighborhood, it's skewing towards a larger decrease in foot traffic to last year, which probably means it hasn't recovered.
Yes, that's true. And actually, if we look below, we have the collection recovery status, which shows whether the collection has recovered. The recovery here is based on the number of census block groups that have recovered within the collection. And below that, we have the collection recovery trend, which adds a time dimension to the collection's progress towards recovery.
Okay, interesting. And remind me, how do we define recovery?
A census block group is defined as recovered if foot traffic for that week is close to a 2019 baseline. The actual methodology is a bit more nuanced, so please visit our website for more details on that if you're interested.
Okay, right. So one of the ways to derive a baseline that adjusts for seasonality is to look at last year, so that definitely makes sense. Awesome, so thanks so much for the context. I think we can take a look at Boston now.
Yeah, looking specifically at Boston, we can see that as a collection, it's pretty red across the board, meaning that the city of Boston has not yet recovered. However, if you look at the suburbs outside of Boston, those have started slowly to recover. Okay,
so that's interesting. So basically, Boston as a whole, not recovered, but it does look like some census block groups behave differently from another. So actually, can we get a closer look at what's happening in one of these census block groups?
Yeah, these are the insights at the collection level. However, you can also click on a census block to drill down for more lower level insights.
Okay, so looks like we're still using the red-green for recovery. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. The red-green indicates whether the census block group has recovered. However, what's new here is that we also have the trend and the momentum, which shows the rate of recovery for this specific census block group.
Interesting. And why is that important?
It's important because if the census block group has not recovered, by using the momentum, you can understand the rate of change. It can be used as almost part of a predictive element because of its, if the momentum is strong, then recovery will happen sooner than areas where the current decrease in foot traffic is not as severe, but the momentum is either very slow or non-existent. I also want to point out one last feature, which is the one here, which is foot traffic, that we've broken into visitor types, such as locals, non-locals, residents, and workers.
Right, and that's actually quite important because we know that movement of certain visitor types can be proxies for the area's economic health. So for example, if a given area is very tourist heavy, and we know there are a lot of tourist heavy places in Boston, and we see that the non-local foot traffic remains depressed, then perhaps this area has not yet reached economic recovery, even if overall foot traffic is higher. So actually, I want to take a step back and for our audience, give a bit more definition around some of these visitor types. So the way that Unacast defines a resident is basically any device or any identifier who lives within the census block group that we're evaluating. A worker is any person or device who works within the census block group. Local is anyone who lives in another census block group, but still within the same MSA. And non-local is anyone who lives in a census block group outside of the MSA that we're evaluating. So this is awesome, Ingrid. As we can see here, a lot of insights to be gleaned from the tool. I'm actually quite interested to see what's going on in New York City. It's another major city on the East Coast, and also that's where I'm from.
Yeah, no problem. We can actually have a look. Yeah, we actually had a look at the financial district. Here.
Awesome. So let's see what's happening here. So Ingrid, unless I'm reading this wrong, it looks like not a whole lot is happening in the financial district. Am I right?
Yeah, so you can see that as a collection, it's all red, meaning it's not recovered. And if you drill down into this census block group, you can see that overall foot traffic is down 69% to last year.
Right, and that's a sizable decrease. I'm just looking at the chart at the bottom, and it seems like it's even worse, or it was even worse at the end of April. It was around minus 80% to last year, but now it looks like things are actually starting to pick back up.
Yeah, and this increase is mainly driven by locals, and lately some non-locals as well. You can see that for locals, their foot traffic is starting to pick back up. Conversely, resident foot traffic dropped at the end of March and has remained flat, pretty flat ever since. Worker traffic is even more noticeably impacted, down to almost 90%, and has stayed there.
Yeah, and actually that makes sense to me. From what I know of the area, it's mostly white-collar professionals who work in that area. Understandably, these people have jobs where they can work from home. I imagine, though, that all the restaurants and the bars in this area who are dependent on these workers, they're probably suffering more than other businesses. And if this goes on for much longer, it's going to have a protracted impact on those types of venues.
Right. As you noted before, even as foot traffic is rebounding, the composition of foot traffic will be quite different from neighborhood to neighborhood. Real estate professionals cannot assume that just because general activity in the neighborhood is picking up means that they can expect a return to normalcy for their businesses. On the other hand, if businesses pay close attention to how the visitor mix has changed, there's a real opportunity for them to pivot as needed to cater to these new visitor types.
Right. Okay, this is awesome. So, we're looking at the financial district. This is interesting to see. It's the capital of finance on the East Coast. But we know that New York tends to behave quite differently from other parts of the US. So I'm actually wondering if we can take a look at a more representative neighborhood.
Sure. Let's go to the area of Round Rock, which is a commercial area near Austin. For those of you who are not familiar, Round Rock, Texas is part of the Austin metropolitan area. We believe that it's more representative of a general commercial area in the U.S. versus the one in the bigger cities. The area is this area particularly has many commercial venues and shopping centers such as Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, etc.
Right, and that mix of venues actually sounds more like where most people would go versus those who live in areas such as New York City.
Yeah, exactly. As we can see here now from the coloring, again, the coloring of the census block groups, the area is not yet recovered. However, we can see that the distribution of the census block groups show that 60% are actually trending towards recovery.
Okay, interesting. So help me understand, does that mean that activity is picking up in Round Rock?
Yeah, precisely. Even though traffic is down, I think if we click here, approximately 30% compared to last year. It's much better now that it's much better now than it was at the end of March, where it was down 50 to 60% from last year. And what's interesting here is that even though total traffic is trending towards recovery, workers, for example, are still notably absent, more than 50% down.
Okay, so that's interesting. So even in Round Rock, Texas, we kind of see a similar trend happening as the one in the financial district, albeit to a much lesser degree.
Yeah, and one thing to note about this area is it's actually the headquarters to Dell. Presumably Dell employees are also more able to work remotely than those in other professions.
Yep. So I want to go back to a point you made before. Overall foot traffic is starting to pick back up. Can we actually see what's driving this increase in the traffic?
Yeah, so it actually looks like local, like the non-local traffic, having been down about 70-80% now, is earlier this year starting to show signs of return.
Got it. Okay. And non-local traffic can be a good proxy for whether the area is starting to recover as a, quote, destination zone.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But actually, local foot traffic has been a consistent part of the visitor traffic here. If we take a look at it, while it did drop here at the end of March, along with the rest of the US, it started to pick up much earlier and stabilized around minus 20 to 30% for a while here.
Okay, interesting. So actually, if I were a tenant or a landlord in Round Rock, Texas, I would probably want to pay extra attention to the local foot traffic here, since out of all of the visitor types, the local traffic seems to be the most resilient. So overall, it seems like there's actually a lot of information to unpack here. Actually, I'm curious, as a data analyst, if I wanted to do additional data transformation, or if I wanted to build my own visuals, let's say, would this tool allow me to do so?
Yes, so while you can't build additional visuals like bar charts or temporal graphs directly in the tool, we actually do have an export functionality that allows you to take the data with you for further analysis and custom visualizations in your own data analytics tools by simply downloading as a CSV file directly from the user interface here.
Nice. Okay, so I can take all of this data in as a CSV, take it into like Tableau or whatever other BI visualization tool I have, and then create additional visualizations, or probably, as many of you in the audience, you would pair this with other data sets that you're working with. Okay, so great. I think that is, the majority of our demo, and we do want to leave some time at the end for questions. If anyone wants access to this tool, please feel free to go to unacast.com, or you can email us directly, and we would be more than happy to set you up with a trial. Would love to see how you can incorporate it in your decision-making process.
Yeah, we would love to have you try out this tool and give us your feedback. We're actually launching some new exciting features tomorrow that we did not get a chance to demo today. We'll be including top points of interest, and also a new map visualization with a more nuanced view of the recovery. So after this demo, you should definitely go to our website and sign up and test it out.
Are we ready for some questions? Because we've got some stuff coming in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. So how does the platform help companies make better decisions in terms of site selection strategies? Not just this, insight tool, but some of your other, other products.
Yeah, so great question. This tool definitely can help with site selection. If you are considering a few different areas, but with COVID-19 now, some areas, as we've seen here, are recovering faster than others and in different ways as well. So depending on what is the type of, property that you're trying to build, such as if you're trying to build an office building, you might want to find a place where there are going to be more workers returning. Or if you are trying to build residential, then you'd want to find a place where you are starting to have more non-local residents going there, and the residents traffic has actually remained stable or increased more sizably than others. But specifically for site selection, I think one of our other products that we didn't get to discuss here is our migration patterns product. So migration patterns was actually built with the intended use case of identifying what are emerging areas in the US. So we now see people moving residences at a higher rate than previously. And what a lot of real estate professionals know about a given area has probably changed quite a bit. So our migration patterns data set can actually point you to which areas are actually seeing a greater influx of people than other areas.
So how do you collect the data?
So great question. We work with many app partners who provide us with the GPS signal. So I'll just take a step back and explain the collection methodology a bit. When you use an app on your phone to which you've agreed to share your location when you use the app obviously records that location. We then partner with these apps that do collect this location data, obviously in a very privacy-friendly way. We always ask for consent before collecting this information. And then we aggregate all of these GPS signals to derive the insights that you saw here today.
Thank you. So what countries do you cover? And we're getting asked about Canada again, so if you can speak about Canada. But yeah, what countries do you cover?
We actually cover a lot of countries. Specifically for this tool though, and our more higher level products, they're currently only available in the US, but we do have GPS coverage across the world. Canada is one of the countries where we do have a higher penetration. The actual size of the market, or what percent of the Canadian population we capture, I don't know off the top of my head, but definitely reach out and we can provide you with all of the stats for Canada as well as any other country as well.
So how do you distinguish between locals and non-locals? I remember that was a key feature in a lot of the insights in the graphs.
Yep. So I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but the local, what we determine as a local person or a local device is basically any device or person that is observed within the area that we're evaluating. But their home location is not actually within the census block group, but it's within the same MSA. A non-local device or person is anyone outside of that MSA. So MSA is really the boundary by which we're distinguishing between local traffic and non-local traffic.
Can you talk a little bit about your partnership with Cherry and how that works?
Yeah, so I actually, unfortunately, am not super equipped to answer that, but definitely please feel free to reach out and we can put you in touch with the right people who can explain all about that partnership.
Great. So how are people using this, in the area, the COVID era? So how are they using this data in the COVID era?
Yep. So as Ingrid mentioned before, the landscape has changed quite a bit, and it varies significantly from area to area. Even counties or neighborhoods that are right next to each other will respond or behave differently. And I know that there's a lot of tribal knowledge that is used by real estate professionals, but with COVID-19, a lot of that tribal knowledge may not be as applicable anymore. So using this data is actually a really clear-cut way to get an understanding of what's happening on the ground without actually being on the ground. We know that travel and actually going and visiting an area is pretty tough to do nowadays. So this is just one of the ways that you can use Unacast's data to get insights on, on the ground level insights for a given area without actually having to be there.
So how do you define an area as recovered?
Yep, so recovered is basically we're using 2019 foot traffic as a baseline. So if we see that an area current foot traffic is close to the 2019 baseline, so basically the foot traffic that was seen in that same area during the same time period last year, if it's close enough, then we will consider that to be recovered. There's actually a lot more to it as well. We have to see that it's consistently remains close for a few weeks in a row, and some other stuff, which I won't go into details here, but the information is definitely available on our website. If anyone wants more information on the recovery methodology or the visitor type methodology or methodology for anything else we have.
Yeah, so we'll leave it there. So visit unacast.com for more information or the email address at info@unacast. But Madeline and Ingrid, thank you so much for this. This was really interesting to see that this data is out there, and it's just interesting to see some of how these neighborhoods are starting to come back a little bit. So thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bethany. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.